Hey, what up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you tonight, hyping everybody up for the big Anthony Pettis going up against Rafael dos Anjos fight. UFC 185. Everybody's looking at this card as a very, very good card. When you look at the UFC show, top to bottom, if you're going to pay for this show on pay-per-view, you get your dollar's worth. You got very good quality fights from the top to the bottom. You're going to get a great lightweight championship as your main event shot. Anthony Pettis, of course, coming into UFC 185 as your lightweight champion. Pettis at 28 years old. This guy's been training since the age of 19 back in the days. He used to train in Milwaukee where basically he used to get his ass kicked on a daily basis, and he used to love it. And, the poundings that he used to take back in the gym back in Milwaukee turned him into being one of the best pound-per-pound fighter in the UFC for what he does. Pettis loves what he does. You can always see this guy smiling in the camps and in the press conferences on his way to the ring. This guy, he loves fighting. He loves UFC. He's made this his goal to take over the lightweight division, and that is exactly what he's done. Pettis won the title against Benson Henderson at UFC 164 by submission. After that, Anthony Pettis had to go and rehab his knee. He had a knee injury that he had to go in and get fixed, but this is going to be a tough fight for him. Dos Anjos is a very, very dangerous fighter. Dos Anjos, back in the day, coming from Rio de Janeiro, had to pick which career and which life path he was going to take back in the day. He had to pick, basically of, moving to the United States and training to become a great UFC fighter, or if he was just going to stay and just be, basically a normal guy. Dos Anjos is coming into this fight at age 30. Inside of the UFC, Dos Anjos has a record of 12-5. He's coming in with a 3-win streak over his last 3 fights. He has a KO over Benson Henderson, and as well, he had a decision over Nick Diaz. He had 3 fights, all in 2015, all that he was proving that he was a big draw, and that he was an exciting fighter that a lot of people like to watch. He's still haunted by a loss that came to him in 2014 by a Russian fighter. He lost this fight by unanimous decision, and the Russian's fighter name I just honestly can't pronounce, and I don't even want to try to butcher it. He came into that fight giving up a weight advantage. The Russian fighter was able to use that weight advantage to basically pin Dos Anjos to the cage or pin him to the ground throughout most of the fight. This loss has basically haunted Dos Anjos, and he's trying to get a shot at basically, getting a chance to fight against this fighter again. He knows that he needs to get the win at UFC 185, and that's basically one way that he'd be guaranteed to get a shot at this Russian fighter one more time. He really wants to get that loss off his record, and he wants to erase it. He had a great 2015, but the guy is still thinking about the loss that came, over a year ago. Pettis, is going to go into this fight. He's a very, very good fighter. He's a very creative, and he's very unpredictable. He's won his last 3 fights with just 1 kick. He's won 2 of the last fights by submission. This is a guy that can knock you out at any time. Watch when you watch this fight. Watch for the spinning back kick. Could come at any time, and it is one of the coolest moves that comes inside of UFC. The guy's got to be standing there wondering what the hell's coming at him, and next thing you know, he's got the kick right upside his head, and the guy's going down. It's going to be a real good fight. Like I said, the whole UFC 185 is stacked top to bottom. Basically, in my mind, I think that Pettis is going to take the pace of the fights, and when he does, it's going to be over. If Dos Anjos is able to control the fight with his kick game, he has definitely a good chance of winning the fights. He dominated Nick Diaz with kicks to the legs during that fight, but honestly, in my opinion, I think Anthony Pettis is too strong of a fighter in UFC, and he is the guy that I think is going to be taking this at UFC 185. You guys let me know what you guys think, because this is going to be a good fight tomorrow. Put your money on the table, because this is going to be one worth the money. Hey, what up everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you with the most exciting fight for UFC 185. Of course, is going to be the big heavyweights going in there and getting at it. Two of the most popular fighters inside of the heavyweight division. Roy Nelson going up against Alistair Overeem. This is going to be a huge fight. When I watch wrestling, I like to watch two big dudes like Biggie Langston and Rusev get in the ring, and that's basically one of the reasons that really attracts me to UFC when I watch these deals. I know that in these videos I talk about all the time that I'm a new fan. I've really started to really dive into UFC, and some people have told me from these reviews and these preview videos that they can tell that I'm really into this, that I'm not just making videos and things like that. But when these guys get into the ring, it's going to be an exciting match. Roy Nelson, to me, honestly looks like a guy that should be driving as a cross country trucker. This guy does not look or have the the appeal of a UFC fighter. This guy looks just like a big, overweight dude that should be, saddling up in a truck and driving chickens or something like that cross country. Just look at the guy. I mean, he looks like, all in all, he comes in to the fight at UFC 185 with a record of 21-10. I like this guy though because basically he has this quote that basically says, "Whoever fights me will say that I'm never going to fight Roy Nelson at the end of that fight." They never want to come back into the ring with this guy. This guy trains. He was born out of Las Vegas. He's won 5 of his fights in the first round. Roy Nelson does have a downside to him. He's lost 3 of his 4 last fights. Nelson lost his last fight to Mark Hunt at Fight Night 52. Alistair Overeem, honestly, is a guy that, he has won a lot of fights inside of UFC. He's won 10 of his last 13, but he's lost 3 of his last 5. His last win coming against Steven Struick at UFC 141 is when Alistair Overeem probably got one of the biggest wins of his career by beating Brock Lesnar by TKO in the first round. Lots of people will always remember that fight as Brock Lesnar's last fight. Brock was running away from Alistair Overeem in that fight as Overeem was hitting him. He probably went into that fight a little bit too early. His body just wasn't feeling it. If you want to talk about the wrestling appeal to this fight, basically Alistair Overeem had beat Frank Mir by decision at 169. After that fight, he called out Brock Lesnar, saying that if Brock wanted to come back to UFC, because it was heavily rumored at the time that Brock was trying to start to negotiate for a fight with UFC and leave WWE at that time, that he'd be a willing opponent. A lot of people have Brock Lesnar coming back to UFC after WrestleMania 31. At that point, fighting against Frank Mir. Of course, Alistair Overeem, the guy who beat Brock Lesnar that made him retire, has a win by decision over Frank Mir. I'm sure Alistair Overeem would be putting up a fight trying to get that. Of course, Brock Lesnar has a history with Frank Mir as well. Frank Mir was the fighter who beat Brock Lesnar in his first fight by submission after Brock came in and just dominated the guy, but wasn't ready for UFC competition. No one really taught him how to fight off a submission hold, and as soon as it was locked in, Brock was tapping out. And he trained, he got better, and he really improved. Brock was a great UFC fighter, but he's been away for UFC for 3 years. So I'm sure a lot of these heavyweights are licking their chops, hoping for Brock Lesnar to come back, hoping that they can get the call, because I think a lot of guys think they're going to be able to beat Brock. Roy Nelson, Alistair Overeem, Frank Mir, all 3 guys looking to fight Brock as soon as he comes back. Hey, what up everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you with the welterweight championship, well, no, not championship fight. I apologize, with the welterweight division fight, which we'll be setting up, basically who is going to be going after Robbie Lawler, the now champion, at a future date. Basically, whoever wins this will basically become a #1 contender for this. Johnny Hendricks going up against Matt Brown. Hendricks was the former welterweight champion. He lost to Robbie Lawler at UFC 181 via decision. He's really looking for a rematch in order to get that champion shot. Basically, he won the title by beating Lawler at 171 in early 2014. Of course, that was after losing the championship to, later retired George St. Pierre at 167. When he beat Hendricks at 171, it was to claim the the championship, which had been dropped. They were trying to find a champion at that point. In his last fight, Johnny Hendricks really started strong, but had a problem with conditioning, and he really got late, real slow in the later rounds, and the one guy that, is going to suck for him to go up against is Matt Brown. Matt Brown was pulled off of a fight night fight. I believe it was fight night number 60 is when he was supposed to compete, but they basically saw that Brown versus Hendricks would add a whole lot to UFC 185, and lucky for us, like I was saying, the last two UFC shows have sort of been one-hit wonders. If you look at the Ronda Rousey fight that happened, was that last weekend? Or maybe the weekend before. It seems like it was yesterday. But, it's sort of like Rousey was in the main event, and that was it. And we've had a few fights like that this year. Of course, every couple of months, there seems to be that, big, supreme, super fight, that is stacked. And that seems like what UFC 185 is going to be. I think this one could really pull down and get your money's worth. Matt Brown, seems like everybody's talking about Robbie Lawler in this video because Matt Brown is coming off a loss to Robbie Lawler. Before the loss to Robbie Lawler, he had been tearing up the division. He had 6 wins that went back to 2012 before the loss to Lawler. 6 of those wins came via knockout. At the last fight, Brown lost the fight, but still was given the fight of the night bonus. So, like I say, and you got 3 really good fights here with, of course, your main event. You got Roy Nelson versus Alistair Overeem, Johnny Hendricks versus Matt Brown, Dos Anjos going up against Pettis. 3 dynamite fights. Really, really worth the money. Call some friends. Get them over to the house. In this one, I'm going to take Matt Brown. I know that's sort of like, taking the underdog in this one, but Matt Brown is the guy that I'm really feeling to win this fight. I think he's going to pull it out from here. What are you guys thinking on this one? Anybody pulling for Hendricks? All I know is it's going to be dynamite. Knockout. Here we go. Peace out, everybody.